Hello again, everyone. I'm E.J. Stevens.
And I'm Bill West. And welcome to another edition of SCV In the Movies, a program that highlights the entertainment history that's continually being made right here in the Santa Clarita Valley.
We are met here tonight by one of the true SCV film legends, a man who lives here in the Valley, who has a saddle engraved in the pavement of the Walk of Western Stars in Newhall, as well as having his name etched into an Oscar, which he won in 1993 for the film Unforgiven. We are talking about the incomparable Joel Cox. Joel, it's a real pleasure having you here today. Thank you so much for taking time out. I know you're an incredibly busy man, and we really appreciate you coming and joining us here tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm kind of honored here to be in a little hometown and be on their local television. I've had a very fortunate career and been very lucky, and I'd love to talk about it.
Well, we love having you here to talk about it. We want to learn all about this career that's amazing. And the first thing, though, I want to set the groundwork because I know that a lot of the people out there maybe really don't know what a film editor does. I mean, maybe we should set the groundwork just to find out what an editor does or what you think an editor is supposed to do.
Well, I'll tell you, an editor is the last write of the script. I was very fortunate. I started in the Mailroom at Warner Brothers and worked my way up into editing and got to watch a lot of great editors apply their trade and their, I won't say expertise, but you know, it is an art. And so you learn the art of how to create scenes and how to develop character. And there's so much to it. It's really something. You just as you learn how to do it, you learn storytelling and tempo, moments of pause for emotion, fast cutting for action films. Every film is different, and every film you edit is going to be different. You can't say, well, this is my style. And I did hear an editor once say that, but it really isn't. The film is the style. It's what the story's saying, and what you're trying to do is to edit the various pieces of material that's shot for each scene into a sequence, and each sequence is a little story. And you just start plugging these little stories together, and hopefully you've done the right thing, and then you're just, the last thing to work out there before you turn over to the director is what I call the transitions. That's from one scene to another, because they're very important, how we take you from one scene to the next scene. That's
the last thing you do. From a simplistic view, I would have thought that was the first. I don't know.
Well, no, because see, a lot of people don't realize how you edit a film, and that is this. Production is set up by a schedule. So they set up a shooting schedule, and whatever they're going to, let's say there's a house in this movie that plays like 4 times in it. They'll go in there the first day of shooting, and that's maybe where they're starting, the first day of shooting, and they'll shoot scene 3, scene 20, scene 40, scene 50, okay? I get them 2 days later or a day later. It's getting faster with digital now and high definition. But the first scene I cut may be scene 20. And I finish scene 20, and then I cut scene 40, and then 50, or whatever the scenes of 23, 38, 92, and they sit in my bin and waiting to put the film together. Because I kind of, before I start, I kind of dissect the script into so many pages, and it really kind of works like a minute a page. So it's really just an outline setup. So I kind of build my reels and have them all set there. So I just place it in the bin, know it's going to go in that reel. And when I say, see at the end, the transition is because I may do scene 20 first, and scene 21 may be the last scene they shoot. And that is when that transition will be made. So as the scenes come together and you start to be able to put scene 3, 4, 5 together, then I look at those transitions at that time as I have the scenes to put together. But you don't wait to the end, but you just wait till I have the material the sequences together so I can put them together.
You must really understand the movie, because I didn't realize, I thought about the pacing, that you probably are in charge of the pacing, but I didn't think about the emotion. You must really know the insides and outs of the movie to take it from all these different slices across time, but capture the emotion on, say, scene 20.
Well, I have a very distinct way I work, and I learned that from some of the old film editors that I was fortunate to apprentice under or assist under. And people say to me, I'll say, well, how do you know? Well, it's experience, and I have a lot of years of it, and it's in here. And the emotion is, part of what I feel, the character. I listen to the performances, but, and they gave you a performance, but then I'm always in there tweaking the timing of the performance. And it's up to me to make a decision somewhere where I will edit from one person to the other, maybe the other person, as right now, if we were editing the scene, the camera might be on me, but somewhere in my scene, I would edit to you reacting to what I am saying, and then back to me. And if there's 3 people, we could actually go from me to you to me, and see, we could just start doing this. And if there's 4 people, it gets more complicated. And the more people, the more complicated to keep them in the scene, because they need to be in the scene. And you can't just cut in close. Television, you see a lot of close-ups. Well, the medium is because for years, 24-inch, 25-inch, 27-inch TVs, 30-inch TVs was what people had to look at it. So they couldn't have big full shots like features did, because otherwise they'd look like little midgets in there. Right. So that's why television really has a lot more close-ups than features do. But there are some features done that way now. It's a kind of a new wave of filmmaking, and it's based, I believe, because we have raised a generation of children on MTV and fast cuts and music beats and things. And the style of films that I've been fortunate to do, and I do, are emotional films. And you can't be, making the cuts do this to a beat of a music. It's about the emotion, the moment, the timing, and the feeling, and where you're staying. And, just because in a take that they may have shot on me and you're talking, but somewhere else in that take, I see something in your eye that I think would be a great reaction for me to what you're saying. And I might steal that piece and put it there. You, as an editor, I believe you have to know every frame of film that is shot for every scene, and you have to know it. And so my way of going is that we run, they shoot, the next day we get film. If it's film, now it's going to be, this is my second film I'm going to do coming up. It's going to be in a digital world. And so the next day we'll have dailies. And so we'll run the dailies. And then when I'm ready to edit a scene, I run each of the takes, and I make on a legal tablet, I just make like a 2-line little note about what happened in that scene and the looks and things. And is there something in there that I think is important out of this? There might be a couple of takes, and I like this one and like this. I'll make little notes for that. But unfortunately, when I go to edit, it's over here, and I never look because I have a great memory, and I just remember where all these little things are. And once in a while, because there's so much film in a scene, I'll have to look over there to the note and just say, oh yeah, it's in that take, and I'll go for that and get that piece and edit that piece in. But I have, and then I cut the scene.
I love that you do that on a legal pad, old school. That's
I think to me, I learned it as an assistant, because in the old film way, when we did things, you had rolls of film, you had the picture and track, and they'd run it on daily separate. Then I'd wind them off in individual takes and put them on a bench for an editor to cut. And he always liked to have a little white card on them. So in dailies, I would be making these notes, because that's what I'd be seeing, and I really wasn't making my dailies, I was making my notes, and then I'd transfer those notes in a more smaller way onto the white card, so when the editor was editing, he'd look at the cards. But, and I've edited a lot of films that way, and then we got into digital editing, and it's really kind of changed the whole business. And even Clint says that it is probably the greatest thing that happened to editing.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the opposite.
Exactly. Well, it's because here's one of the reasons. Let's say I cut a scene, and whether it's Clint as the director or somebody else, they come in and they say, I like that, but I had an idea we'd do this. So I having cut the film, know that maybe that's not going to work, but I edit that scene. So I take my scene apart and use the parts and put it together for him. He looks at it and says, whoa. Now, I see why you did what you, I want you to put it back. It will never go back in film to the exact way I had it. Unless you made a black and white reversal, you would never get it back cut for cut because the film has been recut and it'll be close, but it won't be the same. In the digital world, it's, you cut
undo.
Well, no, you cut a scene and then what we do is we build the whole first cut. And when the director comes in, whether it's Clint or somebody else, we then make a copy and we save my first cut.
Sure.
Okay? So we make changes for him, and if he says go back, we just go in here, take this piece, and just drop it in in the new piece. So that's where he says you save, because you never lose anything. I never lose. Even if I start a scene and I run into a little problem, maybe something doesn't match right, or I feel, well, maybe I should have done this. I just take that, I put it here, make a copy, and I cut the copy. So if something didn't work out, I always have that. So I never lose anything I edit is there forever.
Now, it sounds to me like you were talking about you have to know the pace and the timing and the feel of each scene. So it sounds to me, I mean, editing is traditionally thought of as a post-production, but it sounds like you must get involved very early in the process. I mean, it almost sounds like pre-production. Are you there reading the scripts?
Well, I read the script, but over the last years, when we got into the electronic editing of Avid, we started doing something nobody else in town does. Because Clint is an actor first, and he knows that when an actor comes in and sits down before a director, he's nervous. So he came up with this plan. He has this casting director do like we're doing. Records the actor doing the play, and the casting director reads the opposite lines, and they photograph it. And we started out on little camera stuff and went into half. Now we're into drives and everything. It's all electronic. But then what would happen is we transferred into the Avid, and then we'd build these bins and characters for the show, and everybody who auditioned for a character, we have them all in there. And then Clint would come in a week, 2 weeks later, whatever, and every day he'd run them all. And we kind of slice them down to a couple, we start making a new bin for choices, and then we come down where he just makes a decision, this is the person he wants. And it's a great thing because he being an actor first knows how nervous a person is. And he wants them to give the best performance they can, and he doesn't want them to be inhibited by the director sitting there and the guy's going, oh my God, I screwed up. I wrecked that deal. And by recording it, say the guy could miss something, he could just do it again, and then we got a good take from him.
So to carry on from your question, you're not only at the end of the process, but you're way in the beginning of casting.
Yeah, I've worked year-round for them. I've gone right from reading a script before they even start casting to the end of the film, to the television cuts, to the ancillary market. I've been involved for them since, and that's since 1984.
How about that?
Wow. I have a quick dumb question I have to ask. ACE at the end of the...
American Cinema Editors?
Oh, yes. Is that what it is?
Yes, it's most of the major guilds have a organization where they bring, like for editors, it's editors, for cinematographers, they have their group, and they give out their own awards, and it's a gathering, and it's a nice organization, and I'm a part of it, and I wasn't a part of it for a long time, and because I really never felt that, even though I was editing and doing things, I'm not into the limelight. If most of my friends will tell you right now, I really don't talk about my job. And only when I get stuck when someone knows and says it in front of somebody. And unfortunately, then the 64 questions start coming.
Which we're giving you right now, right?
Well, but this I'm here for. I have agreed to it. But out on the street, and they sit down with you, and they said, well, what about this? Well, what happened here? Well, tell me in this film, why did this happen? And it's like, whoa, wait, man. It's a movie.
Right.
You guys I know that when we did Bronco Billy, a lot of people didn't like Clint's character in it because he backed down to the sheriff, and they missed the film completely. Not the critics, because it was the first film that the critics said, wait, Clint Eastwood doing this? Where's this coming from? Because prior to then, we were doing all these action films, and number of Dirty Harrys and Loose Pictures, and all kinds of action films and in several westerns. But when that film came out, it was like, wow. And since then, you know, if you look at it, we've been very fortunate in the, I guess, the awards world.
Sure.
Myself being fortunate once, but Clint winning a couple of Best Director and Best Picture. It's, you know, people don't realize we believe, because I'm part of his, you know, his company for a long time. We believe that if one person wins something, that everybody wins it because they were part of the film. And I'll tell you something, I am basically the end of the funnel. Because everybody in front of me on the set and prepping up and building sets, and if they don't do their job, I can't do my job. Yes, the actors are very important because they're giving us the story and they're giving us the feeling, but everybody on that set has a hand in making that film. And if you're not all working together, the film's not going to work.
Let me back you up 1 second here. You mentioned that you started it in the Warner Brothers mailroom. I work at Warner Brothers still, so this is very.
You can't do that again.
And I was going to say, so.
It's a shame.
Were you always? I mean, are you from here originally? Did you always want to be in film? How did that all work out?
You really want that story?
I really do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm second generation. My dad was a stand-in extra. Started in 1928.
Wow.
And when I was born, I was 6 weeks old, and I was in front of the camera in a picture called Random Harvest as the baby. Wow. And I worked in front of the camera and did small parts and things like that until age 12, where the last thing I worked on was the Eddie Cantor story.
Oh, wow.
Keith Purcell was playing Eddie Cantor and took a liking to me. And I was in the first day or so of shooting this little scene in can you believe it or not, inside a studio, a radio studio, because it's radio then.
Right.
But he took a liking to me, and they carried me the whole film. Now, that was the first time that had ever happened to me. I've been journey is those kind of small things. You go in for a day or two, and you're done. So I was there like 4 or 5 weeks. When I got back to school, I was so away from school because they have schooling, but it's not the same schooling.
Oh, I bet.
It's a formatted thing for this age and that age, and you're not really doing what you're doing in class. And I just told my parents, I said, you know, I've done this, but I'm bored in that set. And I really, I liked some of the technical parts of it, and someday, maybe down the road, I'd like to get in it. But right now, I want to finish school, and I stopped at 12.
Wow, you wanted to stop filmmaking.
Yeah.
Those kids want to get involved.
Yeah, it's usually the other direction.
Well, I just did, you know, I would have gotten involved, but, you know, at 12, you can't get behind the camera and do anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not against, I mean, I had a lot of fun. I'll tell you, I had a lot of fun. So from that point there until 18, you go through school. And take wood shop, metal shop, electric shop, all these different shops. And I got into electric, and we were building all these units and sound things, and I kind of got into it. And I thought, well, you know, this would be something I'd be interested in. So as I got like 14, 15, I started thinking about getting the studios, maybe in sound or something. And but here's the quirk of you know nobody knows what happens in life. I'll go back to where we were, but I'll just give you this little anecdote here. My folks, I can't remember when I was 16 or something like that. They bought an 8mm camera, and I got involved and started playing around with it and shooting things. And I bought a little viewer and an editor, and I started editing my 8mm, never thinking, dreaming about editing film.
Oh, wow.
And then I go through and I get out of school, and I took an interview for Warner Brothers, and I didn't, very tough then, to get in the mailroom. And one of my problems was my dad being an actor, you know, and doing that, knew Hoyt Bowers, head of Warner Brothers Casting. And Hoyt Bowers put my name in. Well, I had the interview, and the head of the department then, Fred Patmeyer, said, listen, we don't want to hire actors, wannabe actors here, because all they're going to do is be on the sets. And I explained to him my life, and I said, I don't want to do it. Didn't get the job.
Wow.
So then I thought, well, okay, I was just before my 18th birthday, and I thought, well, maybe I'll go in the Navy and take electronics, and I'll come out with education. So I took all these tests, and you can have whatever you want. I said, okay, I'll take this cruise right here. I'll go one day before my birthday, or 2 days before my birthday. And I said, I'll come in, I'll take this kiddie cruise. And the kiddie cruise was you go in before your 18th birthday, out on your 21st birthday. Give them 3 years, here's my life. And so we get down there, for the selective service thing where you're going to, you know, take your physical and all that. And I didn't know, well, I didn't know. They said that I was colorblind and that I could not have electronics. And I said, well, and they showed me, they took me in this room, and truly I never knew it, but I am. But it's the pastel of green and red to light pink and very light green. And there is no, on the old diodes and things, there was no color code ever went there, because I had checked it out, and I didn't know, but I just knew with the color codes, because I've been using them.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no such thing. And they said, I'll give you any other school. And I said, no, not for 3 years of my life. I don't know what I want to do. I know I want to do that. So I left. And I had a job, and I left that job. So I went to work for some friends, a very close schoolmate of mine in high school, and his folks own Superscope. And Superscope, a lot of people don't know this, was the Western Hemisphere distributor for Sony for 10 years before Sony, when they launched to come in this country. So their materials, all their tape decks and everything came out under Superscope, because we'd bring the equipment in, take the Sony off, put all the Superscope name on it. And after 10 years, they had a 10-year deal. Sony then opened themselves, and they are as big as they are today. But while I'm working for them, these guys working there said, because you like sound, you know, why don't you go to RCA Institute and take school, and then we can take you out of shipping and move you up into a higher job here in the electronic field, testing things and fixing things. I said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So I set up for school in September, but I had another opportunity for an interview at Warner's. I go to Warner Brothers, same thing, same answer. So I said, well, I guess this is where I'm going. And so I went into school, and I was working for them. So I'd go to school downtown Los Angeles. I'd get up at 6 o'clock, be downtown at 8 o'clock, do school to noon, drive out to the valley, Sun Valley, California, and work until 7 or 8, go home, do homework to midnight, sleep to 6, and that was my day, 5 days a week. So when we got to Christmas time, it was really, I was making it, but they said, you gonna have to put more. I said, I have no more time. I have to work because my folks don't have money for me to school. I have to do this. And they said, well, take this vacation break and think about it. And maybe you could think about doing it at night and work in the day. And I said, well, they really need me in the evening, so it's kind of hard, but I'll think about it. So I'm off, and we get into, and the school wasn't going to start till like mid-January. And the first week in January, I get this phone call, and come in for another interview.
At Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I'm going, really? Okay, sure, great. So I go take the interview, and I get the job. You start next week.
This was in the mailroom?
In the mailroom.
Okay.
To get in the mailroom, 3 interviews.
Wow.
Wow.
And it was years later I found out how that came about. Hoyt Bowers was very close with Jack Warner in his office because he was head of casting. Like Rudy Fair was head of editorial. Those are the key people that Jack, you know, he would talk to him. Because you have to remember, the studios back then, it was Jack Warner. It was Warner Brothers.
That's right.
It wasn't the director. It wasn't the actors. You were all hired people. So he called Bill Schaefer, who was Jack Warner's assistant, and explained to him what had happened. And he really wanted me to get in the mailroom. Call from Jack Warner's office down to the mailroom. Hire this guy. That's how I got in the mailroom. And there's a lot of people who've tried to get in the mailroom, and that, can you imagine?
So it took Jack Warner to get you into the mailroom.
That's right.
That's amazing.
Well, at least the use of his name, probably. But that's kind of my story. Then I was in the mailroom about 6 months. I got a chance, and I was meeting people, and you know, you're when you go in the mailroom, you're in every department and every office. So you got to meet the head of camera and the sound and all these people. And I'm talking to these guys and thinking this. Never. I'd go through editorial and drop the mail and then not know anything about it. And then they needed somebody that was out sick, and the assistant in the mailroom sent me over there. And it turned out to be 3 days. The guy was sick in about 3 days. And at the end of 3 days, I mean, I was like going, wow, what is this? And, wow, I like this. And so at the end, on Friday night, about 5 to 6, Rudy Fair, who's head of the department, one of the assistants out said, Rudy Fair wants to see you. I said, he wants to see me? Uh-oh. Thinking to myself,
That's really good, right? Yeah.
What did I do wrong now? So I go into his office, and he has me sit down. He says, so he's an elderly German man, a great guy, and very knowledgeable of film, and edited films way earlier in his life. And he says, so Joel, what do you think about editing? And I said, sir, 3 days ago, I knew nothing about editing. But I got to tell you, I am very fascinated by it. Would you be interested in getting in the department? And I said, well, yeah, sure. Yes, absolutely. The next opening we have is yours, because everybody said, what an attitude you have, what a hard worker you are. You just go do things, you never stop. And he says, we need somebody like that in this department.
Wow.
Wow, that's a great...
3.5 years later, I got in the editing.
Oh, is that right?
I stayed in the mailroom. I turned down camera, assistant directing. I turned down office jobs because the studio went into a low flux at that time. They had all those television shows back then, and they all ended. And some of the head guys went to Universal, and Universal became big then, and Warner Brothers had this slow-moving TV. And you can only get in the department when somebody moved up.
I see.
And so it took 3.5 years.
Wow.
After that 3 days.
After that 3 days. So I was about 4 years there. So
What tenacity. Every part of your story, a lot of people would have said, that's it, I'm done.
Yeah, because I could have easily given up. I could have taken camera, and I love camera. I could have taken camera, and they offered me, and that's back now. But as you were saying, you can't get, from the mailroom today, you cannot get into editing.
Right.
When Warner Brothers sold one of the Times, and it was sold after Jack Warner sold it, one of the companies that had it, it was sold to Seven Arts and sold back to Warner's, and it went back. They decided to create what they call the Burbank Studio.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And Columbia moved on the lot.
Right.
Because you know from working there at Warner Brothers. And so they divided the front lot and the back, and they called the back lot Warner Brothers Studio Services. The front is Warner Brothers. Editorial was kept in Warner Brothers. Oh. So when a job would be posted for editing, it would be posted in the Warner, and only the people in Warner Brothers would have an opportunity to get it. People in mailroom, unless nobody showed up, would then have an opportunity. Wow. Well, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And then as the years went, jobs don't even post anymore.
Right.
Because this whole thing became independent, and that the director hires the photographer, he picks his photographer, his director, his art director, and the editor, and then the editor brings his crew. Mm-hmm. So from going in the mailroom today is an impossible, and it's a shame because they no longer have a whole editorial post department.
Right.
Because they hire people in for the job. They used to carry people. And that's why in my years, at that time you had to go through 8 years of apprenticeship and assistant, become an editor. And so as I climbed up off the bike from being a film messenger to the desk area into a show as an assistant, I worked in sound effects, I worked in looping, I worked in music. So, and then my first show was a little film called The Rain People that I assisted on for Francis Ford Coppola.
Wow. Oh. Wow.
And they brought in this editor from New York, and I was his assistant. After that, I did a feature in post, and I met some guys that were Bill Stevenson and Bill Phillips that were sound effects editors, and they were off their season. They were working the FBI show, and when the season went to work, they begged me to go to work for them. It was still part of Warner Brothers. So for 2 years, I did that. I did, post assistant for sound effects and music. So I learned everything about those departments. So for me, growing up and going through that school of the studio system, I learned to understand how each of the different parts of it come together in the post. So when I got my chance to edit, I had a leg up on a lot of people because I'd done all that. And so I know if you cut from here to here and you knew if we were going to do this, you knew what the sound effect or the music, how it was going to work. And so I knew I edit in a different way than a lot of people do.
Because you had
Because I
experience.
understand
Yeah.
how the effects work, and a lot of people don't understand that. And I watched someone do a film this way once, and it was really excruciating for me to watch. But they did not have my background and knowledge, and so they would go, and you've seen whether it's a cop show or a detective thing or a Western, that a lot of times the guns, when they fire, will have a flash frame. And so this person cut from the flash frame to the impact. Well, if you're not schooled and learned, you have to know this, that basically when I make an edit from, let's say from me to you, it's about 3 frames that you're watching it before your eye. The sound will go right through, but your brain, to savvy, and that's, remember that's 24 frames in a second, so you know 3 frames, how part of it's microsecond basically.
Yeah.
But you do lose it. So, and then the other part of it is when you have a flash that this person didn't know is, and some old editors taught me this, you would have the gun flash, you would leave 3 frames. So you get bang, 3 frames, impact. Now, here's the reason for it. Because when the gun flashes, your eye dilates down from the light.
Wow.
And again, milliseconds we're talking about. So by the time you do this and open up, you need the boom, then you see the image and you see it hit. And when you do,
That guy went straight to it.
When that person did it straight through, they were shooting windows. You never saw them hit the window. You'd all be done. And the sound effects editor called me up and said, "You got to go talk to this person." I said, "I can't go talk to this person because it's not my position to go talk to this person. I'm not working on that film. I can't go in there and give a school about it." They take that as an insult. It's unfortunate they didn't have my background and learn all this stuff. And I learned that growing up in the Warner Brothers system.
And don't forget the Wild Bunch. I understand you worked on that.
Wild Bunch. There's a lot of stories about the Wild Bunch. I wasn't on the beginning of the photography. In fact, I came in as an extra assistant after they had returned from shooting in Mexico. But there's a story in Mexico that Robbie Roberts, who was one of the assistants on the film, told me that Sam, in his great way,
Sam Peckinpah, right?
Sam Peckinpah. He would, on Fridays, the crew would line up and say goodbye to members of the crew that he had dismissed, and then welcome those getting off the bus that were coming in. And every Friday, it was a shuttle. Some going, some coming.
Wow.
And editing survived that, so they were fortunate. But when they got back and they started putting the film together, there was a need for an additional assistant, and so I was fortunate. I was in between things, and Rudy put me on the show, and it wasn't for a long time, but it was in a period when they had, if anybody has ever seen The Wild Bunch, they know there's colorized scenes in it.
Right.
And there was a big difference of idea of what color those scenes should be. So Phil Feldman, who was the producer, and Sam Peckinpah, the director, were kind of feuding about the colors. So they decided that we would cut the sequences. They'd order green, blue, brown, red, yellow, and one other, I think, purple. And we cut them to match the color scenes that were in there. And then they would run the film, and they'd put all the blue in and run the film. And then it got to be a game, because they were arguing, Sam and Phil were arguing what it was going to be. And Sam would show up in the morning and say, "Hey, at noon I want to see the film in green," and walk away. About an hour later, Phil would show, "Hey, at 3 o'clock I want to see it in yellow." So we would hustle up, get the color in, take it to the theater, and this is in film then, and they would run as the reels came off the projector back to our editing room and change the color and ready for the 3 o'clock screening. And sometimes the screenings were overlapping and we were just getting the reels there. Because that was in 1,000-foot reels, which means you ran 9 minutes.
Okay.
So every 9 minutes there was a reel change. And so they weren't running 2,000, which is something like this would be, or 3,000 that side. Okay. They're 1,000-foot reels like this. So it was an experience and a lot of fun. But Lou Lombardo and Bob Wolf were the editors on it, and Bob Wolf and I worked on it. I worked for Bob Wolf on another film later in my career. I've been very fortunate because as my career, as I worked my way up the ladder as an assistant, I had this opportunity at one time to work on a film called Woodstock. And
It must have been a trip.
If you've never had your head blown off on a dubbing stage, this was it. But what happened is they finished the editing of the film in New York, not completely, and Warner Brothers made a deal with them. So they brought the film and the editors out here to Los Angeles. Well, at that time, the guilds were not tied together. So if they brought 3 editors out here, our guild required them to put a standby editor to be there. But we weren't going to do any of the editing because it was their show. We were kind of, it didn't belong there, but they tolerated us being there. But we did a lot of the footwork for them and helped them. And then when the film was, and during the film, when we were dubbing the film, and this is why I said about blowing your head, most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life, because those guys, Mike Wadley was the director, all his crew, they were going to run, back in that day, because there's re-recording, stop and pick up, and you can edit on the fly on the dubbing now. And back then, you'd start the reel, and you'd run the whole reel through, and if you stop, you start it again. So when they got a take that they liked, they would have what they call a playback. So that after they record it, they'd play it back. And all those guys, and here is a 40-foot screen, and they would sit like 10, 12 feet in front of it. And if you know about sound, there's a middle point in the room where they call their center point for sound, and it's 85 decibels at that point. Getting close to the speakers gets louder, getting back gets here. They would get 30, 40, they get halfway between that mark. So you'd be knowing they'd be 100 decibels, and they'd sit there. I can't believe, I tried to do it, to be in the back of the room, and I left because it was so loud, because Woodstock they were playing, they would never play in a theater like that because the theaters would turn it down. Right. You don't want them to, but they would. You go into the theaters right here in town, and they're not playing to the level that we as filmmakers would love to see it at. And part of it is because the trailer people have decided that their trailers have to be loud. Right. So they always play in front of the film. So what happens is it gets turned down because the trailer's too loud, and they don't turn it back up for the film. Oh, you're kidding. So the film never really plays at 100%. Oh. And believe me, I have gone in when our films have opened, and I've gone to theaters, not only in this valley, but in the San Fernando Valley and Hollywood, just to see how it's playing, and I've never heard it playing 100%. Wow. And that's got to be frustrating. It is frustrating because you spend a lot of money to make that film, and there's a reason for it, because there's, in the 5.1 world now we're in, and back when those other films I started out were all mono, so you didn't really have an issue of that. Right. But you could hear little intricacies of the sound, and if you turn that down, you lose those low ones. And there's a reason they're done that way, and. But it's nothing we can do, because that to me, and I don't mean this, it's not a knock on the theaters, but it's the weak link of the delivery of the film. Because if we spend so much time and so much money making that film be what we, the director and his team, feel is what that film should be and what it should play at and what it should look at. And another thing they do, they turn down the light, because those lights cost, those bulbs are very expensive. Really? And so they turn the lamps down a little bit.
And that affects your work. That's
of course,
really
well, it affects that, and affects the photographer's work.
Yeah, right.
Things get darker.
Yeah.
And I don't know where we stand with the digital world, because I don't know how I have got that much into the digital cinema now, but I never walked into a house that I set up that I didn't have to have a couple of places they had to bring amplifiers in or rectifiers for the amplifiers I went to a house in to do a preview on a show in Denver, and we were going to play it in 4-track stereo, which was a mag on 35. And I got there, and so the guy put up his, they send Dolby there, and whoever's going to be there, they send a sound engineer, and they're going to check the projectors and check everything, and they fire the thing up, and there's one center speaker working. 3 or 4 of the speakers are missing, and they're not even there.
No.
And you're going like, wow, how did we do that? And unfortunately, I went a day ahead. They had to ship speakers in, and they went to the other theaters, and they took things out of those theaters, and they brought amplifiers and a rectifier. Rectifier sets the current for the projectors. So we worked all night.
Wow. And who knows how long that theater had been in that shape.
Yeah, right.
Amazing.
Yeah, I was at a theater. I won't say where it was or what film it was, but I was in a theater setting up. We were going to run one of our films, and they were not into the Dolby 5.1 yet, and so but they were playing. Well, they had one, and they had the DTS, which is the disc version, but they did not have the Dolby or the DTS, and we wanted to run it in Dolby, so we had the Dolby people bring their equipment in and all that, and they're running a Vita and 5.1 on the marquee and the whole thing, and they're running SR, and it's not even working right. SR is 2-track stereo, not 5.1, and only one of the speakers is working, and they're charging, because I know what it is. A lot of theaters, not in Hollywood, because there's so much Hollywood watching them, but they're not fixing it until it don't work.
Until it don't work anymore. Yeah.
Now
If they got sound, they got a picture, and you got the film.
This shows your experience that you know so much about sound and things you don't normally associate with editing. Now, in the movies that you worked on, I don't want to jump ahead too fast, but
We can. We need to move on, because I know there's a time frame.
Well, I want to be sure and get to a little film you worked on called The Outlaw Josey Wales. And did you have a sense that might be the beginning of a whole new phase of your career?
Wow, that's... It turned out that way. Didn't start that way.
Really?
How did your working relationship with Clint start?
Well, I was actually working on a film called Farewell, My Lovely, and I took over the film because Walter Thompson got sick, and we weren't finishing the editing. It was the second film I'd done with Dick Richards, and a young guy just starting out. Done a couple of films, wanting to be a producer. He was associate producer, and he had all these ideas. And when we got that film done, he said, hey, you and I are going somewhere. And I said, okay, Jerry, I'm going with you. Well, his name is Jerry Bruckheimer.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
And he's...
he went somewhere.
He went somewhere.
Yeah.
And every time I see Jerry, I say, Jerry, I'm still waiting for that phone call. And he turns to me and says, well, you didn't do bad for yourself. I said, yes, we've done very well. But anyways, I finished that film, and I was home, and I got a call from Rudy Fair, and I'd done that film off the lot, and he says, what are you doing? I said, I'm just off. And he says, well, I got an interview for you with Clint Eastwood's editor, Ferris Webster. And I said, great, I'll take it. So I called Walter. Walter called Ferris because he knew him, and I went in and had the interview, and right off the bat, I'm surprised I got it, because at that time in my life, there was a period in my life where 17 years I wore a full beard.
Okay.
And to find out later, he hated beards.
Oh, really?
Oh.
But I got hired. And so the film started, and we edited here in Burbank at Warner Brothers, and the company shot all over. That Western was shot in a lot of locations. And
just one little question there. Do you ever go on location? Did you ever go on location?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
I did with Jerry and Dick on a couple, and I've done a few with Clint, but not many.
Okay.
He kind of likes the idea that I'm home, that I see the film immediately, and then we talk each day.
Didn't mean to sidetrack you. Just
No, but that's okay. That's true. A lot of editors are gone. Like this film I just finished, I was gone for 3 months in Atlanta. But anyways, so we started out with Phil Kaufman as the director, and it's one of those things where they call creative differences. And Clint took over the film and directed it because they just weren't in sync. And Phil Kaufman was one of the writers of the script, and he wanted to direct. And Clint said, because he's given a lot of people a lot of chances. It just was not going what he wanted to do. And so he took him out of the film and took over the film and just kept shooting. There's a rule now at the DGA called the Eastwood Rule, which means nobody working on the film can take over the film. You must shut down, hire a director, go in there and through a number of weeks and let him kind of build up his idea and then start shooting again. Very, a way to stop from people doing what happened that day. But as we were going, Clint was shooting about 35 to 40 setups a day, and that means the cameras, a setup is like, this is a setup, this is a setup, this is a setup, this is a setup, big setup. You know, so you start with a wide, you kind of work your way in. And he was, because it was Western, a lot of stuff going on in that show, we were shooting a lot of 2 cameras, A and B camera. And because, and it's his belief, and if we ever had the time to sit and talk about him as a director, we won't have time today.
We'll bring you back for that. That'd be great, yeah.
He believes that the clapboard is a deterrent in film. He likes to do a lot of in clap because, and he doesn't even say action, but anyways, he feels when there's horses, if you do this, the horse spooks.
Oh, interesting.
So they were doing end markers, and the camera assistants or the operators were turning the camera off before we got the markers. So I would get days where I would have, not 35, I'd have 70 pieces of film to sync up, and if one of the cameras was shut off, I had to hand sync it in the Moviola. Really? And it's a very time consuming. So I was not getting done. Now the reason this happened, that I got this opportunity is that Ferris's son-in-law was his assistant for a long time. And I don't know the story, I never asked the story, but somehow there was a parting of the way. Not of Ferris and Rick, but the company and Rick Myers. So I needed help, and Ferris brought Rick in to help out. And I know he asked Clint if he could do it because we were not getting the film done. But the reason was that, and I know on one day that there was a big discussion, what was I doing not getting the film done in time? Ooh. And it was because of that. And I had this reel where I had 11 setups in it, and 10 of the setups had to be hand sunk. Oh, really? And that day, out of the 70, there was about 30 that had to be hand sunk. And so they ran the dailies, and because Ferris told him, and Clint says, I saw the dailies, I saw every marker. I don't know what this kid, you got to get rid of him.
Oh, shoot.
He can't do the job. And so it came back, and he told me, so I got it out, and we ran the reel down. I ran it. Where is it? Where is it? I said, yeah, he saw the marker, but he didn't see the mark. There's a difference. You can see the marker. You'll see every marker because they're in there. They get it up there. The camera shuts off before he does this. So he just let it go. He never backed me up. And at the end of the film, and Rick was helping me, about a week before like a Friday, a Thursday, or it was a Thursday. I remember now, my mind, how you remember those years.
That is a good memory.
I was letting Ferris, we had a couple of rooms, so the assistants, we were working in this room, I left Ferris, because we were doing things dailies, and it's easier if you don't have that distraction in the room. And so I walked in to get something, and Ferris was talking to Clint, and they were talking about me. Oh, shoot. And like, talk about being uncomfortable. I'm like, oh my gosh. As I'm backing out, Ferris says, well, listen, it's kind of odd, and if it doesn't work out, we'll get Ricky. So I backed out the door, and I went over and I told Rick. I said, what had happened? He said, don't worry about that. And I said, oh yeah, this is a hard thing. I know that Ferris wants you, and I understand it. And I don't want to go where I'm not wanted, but let me talk to my wife. So I came back the next day, I told him, I walked in and told Ferris, I said, look, I know you really want Rick to go with you. So when you guys go north, I'll go off and go do something else, and you guys go. But see, it couldn't be that easy, because whatever happened, I had to fail in front of Clint. That's what it was. And so we took the film. He got through on a Wednesday, and on Friday we packed up the truck with all the film and all the equipment, and we went to Carmel. Okay. And he had an apartment in Carmel next to the Hog's Breath, but up in this back with a balcony overlooking Carmel Bay or Monterey Bay. Magnificent. Afternoon sunsets. Wow. What a job. It's a one-bedroom apartment, so the editing rooms were in the back room, and we had a projector set up in the front room, and because he had a projector. So we got there on Saturday, and we're unloading, and I met Art Rimses, who was Clint's driver captain then, and Ferris showed up later, and his wife, kept saying to Ferris, why is that kid here? Why isn't Rick here? And both Art and I heard it. And so we're unloading. And one time Art grabs me by the arm and stops me. He says, listen, kid, because he doesn't know me.
No, he called you kid. How old were you at this time? Just so get
35.
Oh, okay. All right.
And he says, 33.
Okay.
Remember the dates. He says, listen, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. You won't be in trouble here. Just do your job. Keep your eyes open, your ears open, your mouth shut. Well, I said, okay, I know that one. And we went on. But the reason I know that is when I went in the studios, that's what my dad told me. Eyes open, ears open, mouth shut. Don't say anything negative about anybody. This business is too small, and you have no reason to be saying anything negative. Positive will always be accepted. Negative won't be accepted.
It's probably good.
And that's how I've kind of lived my life.
That's good advice for everything.
So anyways, we get the whole job done, and we go down to the Hog's Breath and have lunch, because we drove up Saturday morning. And so Clint gives me this key, because we just took all the stuff, the boxes, the benches, they were all apart, everything, and just dropped it in this apartment. He says, well, on Monday we'll put it together and we'll go. So he gives me a key, and I go off, and Ferris, he doesn't know me. He says, kid, and he called me kid too. And he says, listen, kid, you're on your own. Dorothy and I, we're going to do ours, but we don't do dinner together. We don't do this. You just, he didn't know me, and I get it. So I went to the Hog's Breath that night, and I had dinner, and I'm sitting there I'm sitting by myself, don't know anybody. And of course, I'm introducing myself. I don't tell them what I do, because that's one of the things. Huh?
Did Clint own it at that time?
He owned a part of it. He never owned the whole thing. He only owned a third of it.
Okay.
So but because of him is why they had it.
Right.
But so I'm sitting there, and I said, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm going in on Sunday. I'm going to set the whole room up, because I got nothing to do. I'm going to go in on Sunday, not charge them, set the whole room up and have it be ready to go when they walk in Monday. And so when Ferris stopped editing Friday in his bench, I boxed exactly what he had, and I kept it in a box and knew that scene he was on, where he was, had it all separated. So first of all, I put the whole room together, as far as putting the racks up, the benches together, whatever, set up where everything, and we before we left, we went to the store and got this plywood, because we couldn't run, it had plush carpet, and you couldn't roll your chairs or do anything, and you didn't want the film on, so we went and got all these pieces of plywood, and we built like a temp floor down there. And so I set everything all up, and then I got all the film out in the out of the boxes, and got everything put away. And I set up his editing, so when he walked in, he'd be like, he stopped working on Friday, and here's Monday, and right where he was, he's ready to go. So I show up about 7:45 in the morning on Monday, and I sitting there having some juice and reading the newspaper, and he comes in and he looks around and he says, hey, kid, what happened? I said, well, I came in a little early because I thought you'd want to be able to get to work right away. About an hour and a half later, Clint shows up and goes, wow, because it had never been that.
Right.
Because the other young man would just wait and then start setting it up. And he says, you're already working? Ferris says, yeah, because he came in early, and when I walked in, I could start working. And I said, yeah, I just thought it would be good for us to get off and get going. So for 2 weeks, this is like first part of December, for 2 weeks, he watched me like a hawk.
You're talking about Clint here.
Clint.
Okay.
Watched me like a hawk. And then Judy Hoyt, who started for Clinton the same time I started in 1975, he had called her. She calls me up and she says, Clint wants you to go home for Christmas for a week, go all the day before, the afternoon of Christmas Eve, and come back and be back to work on January 2nd. I said, you can't do that. We're doing a film. He says, he said he and Ferris, they're just going to fool around a little bit, and don't worry, but he wants you, he says, whatever you're doing, you're the best thing he's ever seen.
Oh.
And I said, oh, so I asked Ferris, and I even asked Clint, I said, are you sure? He said, no, I want you to go.
Wow.
So I go do this, and I come back, and a month or so later, for some reason, Rick comes up for the weekend, and he slips it out that he was there that week I was gone, and helped him out a little bit. And I thought, well, now is that Ferris doing that, or is that Clint? I know Clint wouldn't have done it, and not what he said, and he tested you. Boy, I'll tell you, he tested me a number of times. Remember I told you about writing cards and all that in the film? And there was this scene we did. If you've seen Josey Wales, it's out at the house when the Redlegs show up and they're in the big gun battle.
Okay.
And we had the scenes together, and he said, "Well, I shot this shot that had this, this, and this in it." And I said, sitting there, I'm going, thinking to myself, "Oh, I don't remember that shot." Now my mind's very good, so I got the book out, and I have I have a log of what they shot each day and what the shots are. And I said, then I told Ferris, we don't have that shot. We have this shot, but we don't have that shot. And he's out on the balcony. He comes in and he goes out. He walks out and tells Clint. He says, "Well, you guys just don't want to get that out. You just, I don't know what it is. What's the problem here? But I want to see that shot, and I know I shot it." Into the bathroom. I said, "Okay, Ferris." So I took every shot that was not, I took the film, put it through the synchronized, built like dailies. I built the rolls back up, leadered out the sections that was missing so you could run the scene. So he comes out, and he goes out there, and I'm doing this. So I forget how many shots there were, but I had them all done, and we ran them all. And he said, "No, you're missing one." I said, Ferris looks at me, I said, "Here is the log. Here's the day you shot. Here's all the shots. I think you're referring to this shot, because that's the only one I know that's like that." "Yeah, put that in." Out in the balcony. Never said another word about it.
Wow.
And this is Clint Eastwood, and you're afraid he's going to shoot you if you're lying around.
Yeah, but that's how good my memory is in memory. I knew that shot was, I knew that was the shot he was talking about, but I didn't want to go up until we were pressed against the wall.
Do you think that was the turning point? Do you think that built a level of respect?
Oh yeah. That was a point, because he already said I was the best. Told Judy Hoyt. So we went through the whole film and got done. And at the end of the film, we're walking back from the dubbing stage, and he says, and Clint, I didn't mean to do that. Hit the mic. We're walking back, and he says, "I don't know what your plans are, but my plans are to have you in all my films."
Oh, that's
wow.
I said, "Well, my plan is to be there with you."
Wow, what a moment.
No, exactly.
And here we are 38 years later.
38 years later.
But before we get to that, I'd like to know about your working relationship with Clint Eastwood. I think that's fascinating.
Well, like we were talking a moment ago, it started out, like I said, on if I was a person to put a wager on, I would have never finished that film. And look how it turned out. Right. And we have the greatest relationship. He has great faith in me. In the recent years of pictures, when he started writing the scores, he scores like nobody else. He writes music, and then he brings music to me in like this piece of music. And what do you think about it? Well, I like it. You have an idea where it fits in the picture.
Oh, wow.
So he brings me this, and he brings generally through. He'll bring the theme kind of out, and then he'll bring me variants of the themes, and then he'll bring me some other. And then we'll talk, and he'll go make a piece, and we'll come here, and we'll kind of start editing the music to the film. And no other composer will sit down and write note to note to note to note. He says, because you have to remember, Clint is a jazz lover, and he likes his music to be freeform. He doesn't want to see everything hitting to the beat. He wants to see the music play because he says there's more emotion in it that way. That's why he likes live recording, go to clubs, because the guy playing it, you can hear it on a record, but it's so, they have gone in there and fixed notes and done things to be perfect. He says, I want to hear the real. And so his music is about being like the real.
Let me ask you a question. So it sounds to me like your working relationship is more of filmmakers working together.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like an employee-employer type of thing.
No.
Was it always that way, or did it something that developed over the years?
Well, it pretty much right off the bat, once we hit it, we became, I won't say soulmates, but he saw in me my ability and my creation of working and what I brought to his films. And he really trusted me, and he gave me a lot of opening to do things. And I'm very fortunate because, like I say, if in that first film, I never thought I'd survive that film. And to be, here now 38 years later, still doing films with him and having done the films we've done over those years. And I know we'll get that into another time when I come back.
I'll have you come back.
But as each film started to go from that point after Josey Wales, each film, they started giving me sequences to edit, and I started to build, and he could see in my work, because Ferris was the older school and I was more the newer school, and he could see things I was doing that he liked, and he started incorporating things in there, and he pretty much trusted me to take care of the whole post.
If we wanted to tip our fans off to which movie of Clint's to watch to see a big point in your work, which one would you recommend, or is it this?
Well, there's a number, but the first I would say, honestly, and this will be really off for most people, it's a film we did I think in 1985, 1986, called Bird.
Oh, you're right.
And a Charlie Parker story. And that was a piece of real love and art. And I feel very fortunate about this because after that film had come out and went to Cannes and won Best Actor for Forrest, everybody, I had a number of people around saying, oh, you're going to get nominated for this film. And I said, well, I don't do film. Okay, whatever. That's what you think. So it never happened. But after the Academy Awards, about 4 months later, I had 3 different editors call me that were in the Academy that could have nominated, had not seen the film, and apologized to me saying,
wow,
they've never seen a film like this. And that they apologized that they did not see it because I should have been nominated, and in their estimate, I should have won. And I said, well, I thank you for those kind words. And, I'll give you a story from Clint. Years before that, before we got any awards or anything, he said to me one day, he says, if you're looking for awards, you're working for the wrong person because the critics don't see my films in that light.
That was before it all changed, right?
Before it all changed.
Right.
That was before, Bronco Billy and the whole change of the world for him. And now he's, one of the renowned directors of the world, and every actor wants to work for him. And he has a great way, and I know people talk about the fact that he only takes a few takes, but he's an actor first, so he knows what he's looking for, and he knows how to really deal with actors to get things. And he is, there isn't, I don't know if any actor has ever walked away and said it wasn't the greatest experience of their life. And I can tell you for the crew, that's why he has the same crew, because they love working with him. It's a no-nonsense for business. We go here, there's no yelling, there's nobody looking down or talking down to people. Everybody's equal, they're working. He says, listen, there's no egos on this set. I don't have one, so you can't have one.
Wow.
And it's great to work with someone who's down to earth like that, who respects everybody. But I will tell you this, you cannot BS him. He knows everybody. He told me that when he was doing Rawhide, he was thinking about directing, and he would, a lot of actors, they do their part, and then they go in their dressing room, wait till they need him. He'd stand by the camera and be asking the DP, the director of photography, in case you didn't know that. Why this lens, what this? And they started telling him, and he went to school on that television show. And then he had the opportunity from there to do the 3 Italian Westerns, and all you can say is from there, history has been made.
Well, and you've had a similar background where you learned on the job, even when you were in the mailroom, later a tour guide.
Yep.
Like
Which hits home to me, yeah.
That's, listen, I cherish every moment I have at that. It's very hard to me to look at that studio today and realize 52 and a half years of my life I've spent there.
Wow. Wow.
And to see how it's changed and how we do films now compared to when we did films when I started. I mean, I can tell you this. I mean, when I give you a story on Jack Warner, and I was there to witness as I was an assistant on this show, and the director had come in. And at that time, the actors, the directors, everybody, it was Jack Warner, it was Warner Brothers, it was their film. A film by Warner Brothers, not like you see today, a film by this director and that director. So the director cut this scene, and he liked this scene, but he knew that basically it was a scene that could be removed from the film, but he really wanted that scene in the film. And so we went to the theater to run the film, and we're running this film, and at the end of it, Mr. Warner says, I want you to take that scene out of the film. And they would run and stop and talk. And so, Rudy Fair turned to him and said, Mr. Warner. And he called him Mr. Warner. He always called him Mr. Warner. He said, I forget who the director was. He says, but he was hoping, he knows it, but he was hoping he would leave this in because he really thinks it works in the film. And it's just as straight face as ever. He says, well, the last time I looked, that was my name on that water tower.
Right.
And that's how this film's going to be.
That wins.
That's it.
Jack Warner was something of a film editor himself, though, I think.
I don't know that part, but I will give you another, because we're doing tidbits now, and we'll get to films another time. The very first edit I ever made was by, you talk about being on the edge. Rudy Fair calls me up, and there's this film called Petulia, George C. Scott. It's coming out, and the film is finished, and it's all the prints are at the exchanges. Now the exchanges are like holding places around the United States where they maybe all of Kansas. All the prints would go to one place and they'd be dispersed out to the theaters. And they had these exchanges all over the United States. And so he tells me to get a reel out of this film. And so as we're walking up the street, and this is a time, it's a very tough time in the history of this country because Bobby Kennedy had just been assassinated. And there's a scene, there's a line in there where George C. Scott said something derogatory about Bobby Kennedy. And Mr. Warner wanted that removed. So Rudy Fair and I go over to the theater too, and we run the reel, and he puts a little marker, what they call like a paper mark. It's a piece of paper, and as the film's coming on the reel, you can just stick it in there, and the film will catch it, and it marks where it is. So we marked that, and then we backed it up. We took it out of there and went into the room, and we looked at it, and he says, okay, so we knew where we were. So we ran the scene again for Mr. Warner. We go back in the room. Because I'd marked it with a little piece of tape. So we run the reel down, and they want me to make this cut. I thought I was going there and Rudy's going to make the cut. So I'm sitting on this bench, Rudy Fair, Jack Warner, over my shoulder. I want you to make this cut. My very first edit of my life. And you have to know, composite prints, that in the old days of mono, the track ran 20 frames ahead of the picture.
So they weren't lined up.
Well, because if you knew, anybody who's ever seen a projector, even loaded a camera, it comes down off the roll, and it goes through a roller, it goes up like this, it comes down through the picture head, and then make a loop and come around and go by the sound head. So the digital world is 32 or 33 frames behind. And it's because the sound heads are above the picture head.
Wow.
And so, anyways, so you have to run this in this reader, reading the track, listening to the word, I'm doing back and forth, and I find a point, and I put a little mark in the film, I go down where it is, and I look at it, I make a mark, and then I'm looking, and so I listen to this, and he says, Rudy Ferris, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm just trying to make a cut so it won't be a big bounce here for you. So I was able to make a cut from one angle to another, and the cut had no dialogue in it, and I put this cut together, and we go and run it, and Jack Warner gets up and looks at me and says, young man, because I had saw him, because I was delivering dailies at that time. I was working in the office doing dailies. I'd see him every night and deliver dailies for me. Sometimes he'd be waiting, sometimes I'd be waiting for him, because I'd be waiting to take the dailies. We never leave him in the projection room. You take him out of the projection room. So I'd see him, and when you see him in the evening, he would say to you, good evening, young man, and that would be, okay, you could say, good evening, sir, a couple of words.
You'd been spoken
and he would
to,
say,
right?
how are you doing? How's it going? Always tell him it was great. So he gets up off his chair, he turns to me, young man, that was great. That was perfect. Rudy, I want you to have this sent to all the prints. And so we went back, we're walking back to the office, and he tells me they're going to do it in the exchange, and I'd gotten enough knowledge now to realize that was a dangerous thing to do.
Because they might not do it right.
I saw 4 prints, and not one of them were cut right.
Oh.
Really?
And to this day now, if you were to get a video of it, it's not removed. It's in there.
Is that right?
shoot.
Wow.
It's
amazing.
It's still in the film.
Huh.
It was never cut out of the film except the prints. It would have been removed. If the film was not done, it would have been removed before we finished the film. But at that point then.
Now, we got so much we can talk about.
We have to have a part
we
2.
We want to bring you back and
I'll
talk
come
about this.
back.
Well, this has been absolutely wonderful. We got about 5 minutes or so left, but I wanted to ask you something. This is something I've always thought about. I write books on Hollywood history and things like that, and every time I open up one of my books, I see something that I just go, why did I do it that way? Why didn't I take this word out? Why didn't I, structure it some other way? Have you ever had that happen to you? I've always wanted to ask an editor, have you ever watched one of your old movies and said, I wish I would have done this a little differently? I'm just curious.
Honestly, I've never thought that.
Yeah.
And it's not that, I'm not doing this because it's not that. It's just that, when you're putting a film together, Clint gave me a great piece of advice. Don't second guess yourself. He says, your first instinct is always going to be right. Second means you're over analyzing, and you're gonna make a change in the film that's not going to be good for it because maybe you've seen it too many times or whatever. But your first instincts are so right on. He's I direct that way. That's why I don't do a lot of takes. If I like it, that's it. Print it. We're moving. He says there's no such thing as a perfect film. There's never going to be a perfect film. You'll do listen. There's a couple of films where when we were, I forget which film it was now. I think it was Every Which Way But Loose. That we're running the film one day, and I go, whoa. He says, what? I said, I just saw something I've never seen. He says, what's that? I see the camera crew in the shot. We back up, but what happened was the camera doing this in a fight and a brawl. And so the camera wiped across, and we backed up a lap, and we put it. He says, well, if we haven't seen it to this time, no one's going to see it. But that was at a time before we had home video.
Right,
You could stop and play.
Yeah.
DVD.
Now you could go back a lot of older films if you could get them, and you could run them, you could stop, you could see a lot of things. The Rookie, we have the same thing when the camera's whipping around, and you can see, if you know where to look, you can see a place where in this house there's like a fireplace, and there's Clint in a white T-shirt standing there, and and Jack Green, the photographer, they're standing there. The camera's a handheld camera going around. Those things happen, but it's like another thing. If you haven't seen it till the end, you never, if you have to see it 30 times to see it, guess what? You, the audience, are never going to see it.
Yeah, right.
And if you do see it, we don't have you anyways because you are not in the film. you're looking at the backgrounds. I mean, he did this one film where he hired the first-time director, and this director was going around the set and changing things in backgrounds and stuff. And Clint says, if they see that, this film is dead. You cannot worry about that. It's right here. The actors and this is what we're selling. We're not selling a photograph on the wall back there. And so you learn a lot of things. I wish he would allow someone to photograph him directing and call it Directing 101 to show these young people the mistakes they're making by overanalyzing and doing take after take after take. And I will tell you, this is Clint's philosophy. I don't know how we're doing.
Oh, we're doing fine.
Okay, we got
2 minutes.
couple,
Yeah.
Okay, this will be quick. His philosophy in directing is he knows that you're not going to get perfect, and he knows if I have you do 10 takes, you will become just dumping words instead of performing words. And it's like if you and I were going to do a scene together, and you did it with EJ, okay, and you practice, but he's a friend of yours, and you're coming into this set like this, and you're going to do it with me. The first few times we do it, you're going to be a little uneasy, not sure of yourself, because you're not sure how I'm going to respond to you. And Clint doesn't want you to rehearse because he doesn't want to get it polished like that. He knows that what's real is that when you are just not comfortable, that's really you, and that I can get a performance from you. But if you say it 10 times, you'll say, it's like saying the word, yes, sir, 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 yes, sir. You see what happens? Because you get bored with saying it, so you start changing. And then maybe you start thinking, oh, maybe I should say, oh, yes, sir. You see what's happened? And the voice inflection changes everything. So the more comfortable you become with a scene, the more you say it, the more it becomes a rehearsed, like you know it, and you're reading a script. And he wants that freshness where you're apprehensive and not comfortable. And he says that is more real. When two people meet, when we were doing Bridges, when two people meet, I gotta watch your time because I know you're running fine.
All right.
When two people meet, that's what we did in Bridges. When you and I meet, we don't meet like this.
Right.
We meet like this. And he says that's how you should edit a scene. You meet, you don't meet in close-up. Because when you meet a person, you don't meet them like that. And he says he wants the audience to see it. Remember, the audience is a fly on the wall in these characters' lives.
Right.
And we believe you, the audience, should never see something before the character does, because then you know what's coming. So we're always trying to hide things, and that's the magic of film.
Well, once again, I think you and Clint are a perfect pair because it sounds like you recognize that too in your editing work and bring that to the forefront.
I do. This has been a pleasure, Bill. Thank you.
We're so
I'm telling
glad.
you,
I will come back if you want me to come back.
we would
Absolutely.
love for you to come back. Just do every show. I mean, come back for a whole season and talk about all the films. But
Well,
it's-
we could do a small piece for you, 10 minutes maybe. But I think the people out in the public out here would get a little bored of seeing me on
I
your
doubt
show.
it. I doubt it because your stories are fascinating.
And you're part of SCV. We love
I
that
am.
you
Yeah.
live
I've been
here.
here
and-
since 1984.
Yeah.
Have you?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It goes back.
I remember the onion fields.
Wow.
Where the mall was onion fields, folks.
Oh, wow.
If you weren't here, you missed it. In the summer, you could smell the onions.
Oh, wow.
Well, this has been an absolute thrill for us, and we know that
Yes.
you're one of the busiest guys in Hollywood, so we do really appreciate you coming by, and we'll do this again. It's been a
love to
real
do it.
wonderful thing. Well, thank you, Joel Cox,
Thank
and thank you, viewers, and meet us here again on SCV in the Movies.